that number would be. You are asking this body to buy a pig in a poke, and the reason it is so you are asking this body to buy a pig in a poke, and the reason it is so serious is that, if I could just have an additional 30 seconds.
I yield to the gentleman an additional 30 seconds.
I thank my friend.
Gentleman is recognized.
And my friend from Massachusetts talked about this earlier. Whether it's $100 billion or $80 billion or $20 billion, those all have consequences, because on the other side of the aisle, when we say, well, are you going to be cutting research to find cures and treatments for cancer or diabetes? No, we're not going to cut that. Are you going to cut the FBI agents involved in anti-terrorism efforts? No, we would never want to cut that. What are you going to cut? And the magnitude of those cuts and the negative impact on jobs in the economy will be determined by what? By the number in this bill, a number that we don't get to vote on, that you're giving the chairman of the Budget Committee sole authority to pick out of a hat.
Gentleman from California.
Madam Speaker, I yield myself 30 seconds to respond to my friend by saying a couple of things. Unfortunately, we've begun by degenerating the debate to the sky is falling mentality again, that we're going to be cutting NIH funding, we're going to be gutting FBI agents. I mean, we are beginning a process of getting our fiscal house in order. And, Madam Speaker, I think it's important to note, well, both of my friends have used the term press release. HRES 38 is going to be a statement from the United States House of Representatives that we are today, before the President at 9 o'clock this evening stands here in this chamber and delivers his State of the Union message, that we are committing ourselves to reduce the level of spending. With that, I'd be happy to yield 4 minutes. At this point, I will in just a moment, but at this point, I'd like to yield 4 minutes to my very good friend and classmate, the distinguished new chair of the Committee on Appropriations, the gentleman from Somerset, Kentucky, Mr. Rogers.
Gentleman from Kentucky is recognized for 4 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for your great service to our country over the time that we've served together here. Classmates in 1980, we were a part of the Reaganite crop. Madam Speaker, this is the first step in the effort to reduce discretionary spending to fiscal 08 levels or below, and show the American people that we are serious about reducing the out-of-control government spending that's hampering our economic growth. Now, the gentleman on the other side of the aisle complains that he doesn't see a number. Well, he had a chance last year, along with his colleagues in the majority then at that time, to pass a budget resolution with specific numbers in it, and refused. And has refused until they lost control of the House. The number will be coming in due course of time. The message from the American people was crystal clear in the last election. They want government to spend less, stop undue interference in American lives and businesses, and take action to create jobs and get our economy moving once again. To do this, we must dramatically cut the massive spending that has dominated discretionary budgets in the past years. In order to put our economy on the fast track to recovery, we have to shorten the reach of Uncle Sam, cut up his credit cards, and allow American businesses the opportunity to grow, employ people, and make the economy grow. Starting with the continuing resolution, the CR, my committee will begin to make the largest series of spending cuts in history, Madam Speaker. Members and staff are working diligently on this as we speak, going line by line to find specific areas and programs to cut. We hope and expect this legislation will soon be brought to the floor in a fair, open, and transparent manner, giving all members from both sides of the aisle the opportunity for amendments. Let there be no mistake. The cuts that are coming will not be easy to make. They will not represent low-hanging fruit. These cuts will go deep and wide and will hit virtually every agency and every congressional district in the country, including my own. Every dollar that we cut will have a constituency, an industry, an association, individual citizens who will disagree. And every dollar that we don't cut will also be put into question. But the fact remains that we are in a national fiscal crisis. We must get our budgets, both discretionary and mandatory, under control. To this end, my committee will put forward appropriations bills this year that will fulfill our pledge to cut spending to the pre-stimulus, pre-bailout levels of 2008. And this will be the beginning, not the end, of the effort. I've issued instructions to all 12 of our subcommittees to conduct strenuous oversight, including investigations and hundreds of hearings, to weed out duplicative, wasteful, and unnecessary spending, and prioritize federal programs so that we can make the most out of every precious tax dollar. Madam Speaker, it's clear that cutting spending will require toughness and resolve. This will not be easy. It will not be quick, and it won't be without pain. But the success of our economy and our future prosperity depend on it. Thank you. Now yield back.
Gentleman from Massachusetts.
Yeah, Madam Speaker, I have great respect for the Chairman of the Appropriations Committee, and I appreciate the fact that we're going to have to make tough choices, but he as well failed to tell us what the number is or what those tough choices are going to be. Are we going to cut medical research, Pell Grants, food safety, small business loans, job training programs, LIHEAP, summer food programs for the hungry? What are we going to cut?
The gentleman yield on that point?
I'll answer it for him. And what are we going to cut? I think that members on both sides of the aisle deserve to know what the number is so we can figure out what the pain is going to be. And for the life of me, I can't understand, and I don't think the American people can understand, why members of this House will not be given an opportunity to vote on that number. We ought to have that right. I yield 30 seconds to the gentleman from Maryland.
Gentleman from Maryland is recognized for 30 seconds.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. We just heard from the Chairman of the Appropriations Committee that there was no ceiling for 2011 in place. I'm going to make a copy and ask the pages to distribute this. This is the Budget Enforcement Act of last year for fiscal year 2011, and there you have the budget ceilings, whereas what you're proposing is a piece of paper that doesn't set the budget ceilings, doesn't contain any of the numbers in it, and I would just ask the Chairman of the Rules Committee this. During the hearing, he said we're going to wait for CBO. CBO numbers are coming tomorrow. Tomorrow, are you going to have a number for us?
Will the gentleman yield?
For an answer to that question, I'd be happy to yield.
I thank my friend for yielding. Will the gentleman yield?
My time's expired.
Will the gentleman yield? We have a number of speakers here. If the gentleman yield me time to respond, will the gentleman yield to me to respond to the
gentleman from California is recognized.
I yield 10 seconds.
Okay, I thank my friend for yielding. Let me just say that clearly the budget that we have right now expired at the end of the Congress. We know that very well, and we look forward to numbers which will be coming out from both your new committee, the Budget Committee, and the Appropriations Committee as well.
24 hours, Mr. Chairman.
I thank my friend for yielding.
Are we going to have a number tomorrow?
Gentleman from California.
Madam Speaker, with that, I'm very happy to yield 1 minute to my good friend from the Harrison Township of Michigan, Ms. Miller.
Gentlewoman from Michigan is recognized for 1 minute.
I thank the gentleman for yielding. Madam Speaker, this past election was certainly a historic pivot for our nation. The American people demanded that both the President of the United States as well as the Congress chart a new course, because they understand that the growth of federal spending that we have seen for the last several years is completely unsustainable. They understand that this crushing burden, this debt that we are selfishly placing on our children and our grandchildren is limiting their opportunities. And they also understand very clearly that this irresponsible, out-of-control federal spending is limiting our ability for job creation and for economic growth. Today, this resolution clearly speaks to the House Republicans' pledge to America by demonstrating our commitment to reduce spending to pre-stimulus, pre-bailout levels to a level of spending of 2008. And many would say, Madam Speaker, that this doesn't even go far enough. And that debate will continue this year as we debate the CR, the budget resolution, and the vote for raising the debt ceiling. And today, Madam Speaker, I would urge all of my colleagues to vote yes on this resolution and let the American people know that we heard them loud and clear in November. I yield back.
Yeah.
Gentleman from Massachusetts.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I think what the American people are interested in is serious legislating and serious discussion about how to get this budget under control and not political posturing. At this point, I'd like to yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from New Jersey, Mr. Andrews.
Gentleman from New Jersey is recognized for 2 minutes.
I ask unanimous consent to revise and extend my
Without objection.
term for longer. I thank the gentleman for yielding. All those who care for and think about the 15 million unemployed people in this country on both sides of the aisle want the Congress to work together to help small businesses and entrepreneurs create jobs for Americans. But the new majority right out of the gate has ignored that obligation. The first week, they ignored the deficit and passed a set of rules that says they can pretend it doesn't exist when they want to do something. Then they increased the deficit by repealing the health care bill. Congressional Budget Office says that adds $230 billion over 10 years of deficit, more than $1 trillion over 20 years. This week, they are hiding the deficit. They brought to the floor a bill that wants the American people to guess what the numbers will be under which we'll live in the future. This is not the way to create jobs, either generally or specifically. Here's one fact the members ought to take into consideration. Last year, the departments that would be subject to up to a 25% spending cut under this bill made 1 million contracts with small businesses that gave $60 billion worth of work to caterers, electricians, other small businesses. What will happen to the jobs created by those small businesses if this 25% cut goes through? Now, I say 25% cut advisedly, because I do think we want to take one more attempt at finding out, and I would yield to the chairman of the Rules Committee, will the spending bill that eventually gets here cut by 25% to 2006 levels or 22% to 2008 levels? And I would yield to anyone on the other side who could answer that question for us. What will the number be in the bill that eventually gets here?
I'm sorry, I was talking to my new colleague, Mr. Mulvaney here. If the gentleman was yielding to me, and I apologize, he's going to have to repeat the question.
Reclaiming my time. The question that I asked was...
Gentleman's time has expired.
The gentleman, additional 1 minute.
The question I asked...
Thank
you, Mr. McGovern. Thank you, Madam Speaker. To the chairman, I would say that the question that I asked was that will the bill that eventually gets here that has numbers in it have a 25% cut by going back to 2006 or a 22% cut by going back to 2008?
Gentleman, yield.
Yes.
I'm happy to answer my friend by saying that the House will work its will. It's one of the things that Speaker Boehner has made very clear, and that is we've just heard from the Budget Committee Chairman.
My time.
I thank my friend for yielding.
Reclaiming my time.
Gentleman reclaimed his time.
I would ask what the bill that the leadership brings to the floor will ask for. Will it be a 25% cut that goes back to 06 or a 22% cut that goes back to 08? I yield to my friend.
I thank my friend for yielding. And let me say, Madam Speaker, that Speaker Boehner, who is the leader of this House, both Democrats and Republicans alike, and obviously the leader of Republicans, said this morning in a meeting, as he said repeatedly, the House is going to work its will. We're going to do something that hasn't been done, especially on the appropriations process in the last 2 years. We're going to have a debate that will allow a majority of this institution to determine what those numbers are. And I thank my friend for yielding, Madam Speaker.
Gentleman's time has expired.
Thank you.
I yield the gentleman additional 30 seconds.
Thank you. Just reclaiming my time, that sounds awfully familiar. We were promised an open process, but it was a closed process on health care. We were promised an open process. There's a closed process on this bill. That sounds to me like a promise we've heard before that really hasn't been honored thus far in this Congress. I would urge a no vote.
Madam Speaker, I yield myself 30 seconds to say to my friend, as we talk about an open process, my Rules Committee colleagues know that just a few minutes ago, for the first time in 4 long years, the Rules Committee reported out a modified open rule that will allow a free-flowing debate tomorrow right here on this House floor. And I should say, Madam Speaker, that H.Res. 38 is literally one sentence which says that this institution is committed to getting our level of spending to 2008 levels or less, Madam Speaker. And I think it's important for us to note that. And we have the chairman of the Budget Committee, as I started to say in response to my friend. We have the Appropriations Committee chairman, and we are determined to begin a process. With that, I'm happy to yield 2 minutes to my great new friend from South Carolina, from Indian Hill, South Carolina, Mr. Mulvaney.
Gentleman from South Carolina is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I rise in favor of the resolution. And I'm just happy to be able to have this debate this year. I can tell you, Madam Speaker, that we were campaigning last year during 2010. As freshmen, we'd never expected to have the ability to come into this chamber this year and talk about the FY 2011 spending. We thought that that would be done long before we had gotten here, and I thank my colleagues from across the way for failing to pass a budget last year so that we have the opportunity to have this debate with this new Congress. For me, and I know, Madam Speaker, for many of my colleagues, the key language in this resolution is 2008 levels or less. It's that or less that I think has a lot of the attention of the freshmen. In a world where discretionary spending is up 88% in the last 2 years, in a world where we've borrowed $3 trillion in just the last 2 years, in a world, Madam Speaker, where we borrowed more money in one day. We borrowed more money on June 30th of 2010 than we borrowed in all of 2006. In that world, those two words, or less, are what speak to me and so many members of the freshman class. I thank the Rules Committee and especially the Chairman for making sure that language is in there, and I'm looking forward to exploring that when this bill comes to the floor, and I yield back the remainder of my time.
Gentleman yields back his time. Gentleman from Massachusetts.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I enjoyed the previous speaker. I would just simply say, what is the problem with telling us what the number is and what you're going to cut? The number is important because that does determine what you're going to cut. It determines what the allocations are going to be to the various appropriations committees, and they have real consequences. And the notion that we're doing something bold here by coming up with this arbitrary, statement that 2008 or less levels we're going to go to without any detail, without any numbers, without anything of anything, this is political posturing at its worst. And with that, I'd like to yield 2 minutes to the gentlewoman from California, Ms. Capps.
Gentlewoman from California is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank my colleague for yielding. Madam Speaker, I rise in strong opposition to this misguided and misdirected and destructive resolution. The American people have charged us with creating jobs and strengthening our economy. My colleagues in the majority appear more focused on getting in a good soundbite before tonight's State of the Union. Procedurally, this resolution empowers a single person to decree the entire nation's budget for the rest of the year. No hearings, no markups, no vote. And this plan is nothing more than a gimmick that will destroy jobs. For example, reverting to 2008 budget levels will cut more than $17 million from the National Health Service Corps. This program trains and employs health care providers, all while caring for millions of Americans. Moreover, it will cut both nurse faculty loan programs and nurse training programs by nearly 70%. These cuts will decimate our health care workforce now and long into the future. Madam Speaker, in 2008, over 27,000 qualified applicants to our nation's nursing schools were turned away because we didn't have enough faculty to train them. Countless others couldn't even afford to go. This budgetless resolution will do nothing more than exacerbate a real growing problem. Members from both sides of the aisle know that we desperately need to increase our health care workforce, not cut it. Instead of cutting jobs, we should be creating them. So I urge my colleagues to vote no on this budgetless resolution, and I yield back the balance.
Gentleman from California.
Mr. Speaker, I yield myself 30 seconds to say to my very good friend from Santa Barbara that creating jobs and getting our economy back on track is exactly what this resolution is all about. We all know that on the sidelines all across this country and around the world, there is capital, there are resources that are waiting to be invested. And once we get our economy, our fiscal house in order, the signal that that sends to job creators out there is a very important one. And with that, I'm happy to yield 1 minute to my very good friend from Richmond, Virginia, the distinguished Majority Leader, Mr. Cantor.
Gentleman from Virginia is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I thank the gentleman from California, Chairman of the Rules Committee. Madam Speaker, November 2nd marked the culmination of a long, arduous, and ultimately clarifying debate over the kind of role government should play in the economy. By overwhelming margins, voters rejected an approach that spends money we don't have and concentrates too much control and power in Washington. Instead, they voted for a better way. Republicans are determined to deliver results by instilling a culture of opportunity, responsibility, and success. Madam Speaker, our majority is dedicated to cut and grow.
cut spending and job-destroying regulations, grow private sector jobs in the economy. Today, we have the opportunity to take a significant step towards repairing America's deteriorating fiscal condition. This resolution directs the Budget Committee Chairman to set spending levels so we return non-defense discretionary spending to 2008 levels or below. If you think the government didn't spend enough money in 2008, then oppose this resolution. Go on record for more spending, more borrowing, and more debt. But, Madam Speaker, if you believe we are spending too much money, then I urge my colleagues to support this resolution. It represents a clean break with the past and an end to the unchecked growth of federal spending and government, and it is worthy of our support. And I yield back.
Gentleman from Massachusetts.
Yeah. Madam Speaker, I'm still waiting to hear the number and how much we're going to cut. I'm waiting to see this transparency and this accountability. I'd like to yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from Washington, Mr. Dix.
Gentleman from Washington is recognized for 2 minutes.
Caucus of the House remains committed to fiscal responsibility. We have two major concerns at this point that should be stated as we consider this resolution at the outset of the 112th Congress. First, we must recognize that the highest priority at this point is to get our economy moving again, supporting initiatives that help create jobs and that continue to bring us out of the recession. Our economy is still fragile, and although unemployment is heading downward, it remains too high. In this regard, I believe we must be concerned about a precipitous and substantial drop in spending if it is going to result in increasing unemployment and increasing the deficit. It's going to have exactly the opposite effect of what is intended on the Republican side. It would truly be counterproductive if we added to the ranks of the unemployed workers in America, reducing revenues coming into the Treasury and requiring additional expenditures for unemployment insurance and welfare. And second, the resolution we are considering today specifically exempts defense, the largest element of our federal budget, from any reductions. Even though I have always supported a strong national defense, I cannot imagine why we would hold the Pentagon harmless in the attempt to achieve greater fiscal accountability. Even the Republican majority leader this week agreed that defense spending should be on the table, and Secretary Gates himself has proposed a series of reasonable reductions that could be accomplished in his department's budget. In FY 2011 bill, the Defense Appropriations Subcommittee, which I had chaired with Mr. Young of Florida, adopted last July, we included a reduction of $7 billion from the Obama budget request, and the Senate Appropriations Committee had a similar number. I think we could even do more than that, and I was glad to see that Mr. Boehner, Mr. Cantor, and others have all said that defense should be part of the solution. I think we could cut up to $13 billion out of the defense budget without doing any damage to national security.
Gentleman from California.
Madam Speaker, I yield myself 30 seconds to say to my very good friend from Seattle that I'm in complete agreement with the notion of ensuring that we focus time, energy, and effort on paring back waste, fraud, and abuse, especially within the Pentagon. We all know that it's there, and I'm glad that my friend from Worcester raised that issue in his opening remarks. He somehow was arguing that we have left it as sacrosanct. We don't. The focus today is obviously on non-security discretionary spending, and that's exactly what we're trying to do with this first tranche. But as my friend knows, in his great position on the Appropriations Committee, we know. I'm happy to yield my friend 15 seconds, Madam Speaker.
I would just say we ought to do it now. It'll make it easier. This gives us a bargaining chip with the President and with the Senate. We can make some reductions in defense.
Well, if I could reclaim my time, Madam Speaker, I would say to my friend, he knows very well, we've gone without a budget so far. We are going to go through the standard budget process. And I'll yield myself an additional 15 seconds to say that I'd like to see complete reform of the 74 Budget Act. I want a joint bicameral, bipartisan committee to do just that. But then, with the structure we have today, we are going to proceed with the appropriations process so that we'll be able to do exactly what my friend said. With that, Madam Speaker, I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman reserves. Gentleman from Massachusetts.
Yeah, Madam Speaker, the bill makes defense spending sacrosanct, and so it says nothing about going after fraud and waste and defense contracts. I'd like to yield 1 minute to the gentleman from California, Mr. Stark.
Gentleman from California is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank the gentleman for yielding.
I rise today to oppose the budgetless resolution. It ignores job creation, has no numbers, no specifics, and gives no serious plan to reduce the deficit. The Republicans want to decrease the deficit, and they'll try to cut non-defense discretionary spending back to '08 levels, but they still would save $100 billion in discretionary spending if we put defense spending on the same level. I'm giving them a chance to put their money where their mouths are. Introduced H.R. 413. It would reduce defense spending to 2008 levels. We can't be serious about getting our house in order if we are exempting 60% of discretionary spending cuts. My legislation save $182 billion over the next 5 years. That's $182 billion from a sector riddled with extra planes and engines the Pentagon doesn't even want. We spend more than any other country. The next closest is China. We spend 7 times what they do. How about just cutting back to maybe only spending 5 or 6 times as much as China does? I urge support of H.R. 413. Thank you, gentlemen.
Gentleman's time has expired. The gentleman from California.
Thank you very much, Speaker. Great to see you in the chair there.
Thank you.
Not quite, don't look quite as good as your predecessor who was up there. But with that, Mr. Speaker, I'll reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman reserves. Gentleman from Massachusetts.
Mr. Speaker, I yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from New Jersey, Mr. Pascrell.
Gentleman is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I come to the floor today as someone willing to work towards reforms that will create jobs, strengthen our middle class, and pay down our debt. I'm in favor of comprehensive tax reform with lower rates. I'm in favor of removing regulations that hurt our competitiveness. I'm ready to make the hard cuts we need to pay down our deficit. I think we can all agree on those principles. We might have to change some of the policies, but we agree on the principles. But what we have here today contains no policies, no ideas, and very few principles. This is a budgetless resolution. It calls for a reduction in spending pre-2008 levels, but provides no specifics. What family in America would sit down at the kitchen table, set up a budget without a bottom line? We could be here discussing Mr. Ryan's idea to replace Medicaid with vouchers. We could be here discussing the plan to cut public education, spending 50%, and could eliminate Amtrak and public broadcasting. Let's discuss those things. Or we could be debating the plan Majority Leader Cantor hailed, which would result in the absence of 4,000 FBI agents and 1,500 DEA agents. We may disagree with those policies, but I'm here to work to solve problems. And to say we will drop spending levels up to 30%, but provide no specifics, is being less than genuine. Colin Powell recently said this. I'm very put off when people just say, let's go back and freeze to the level 2 years ago. Tell me what you're going to cut, and nobody there yet is being very, very candid about what they are going to cut to fix the problem. The public has been very clear. Job creation should be our top priority. So far, we've abandoned the principles of pay-as-you-go and added $230 billion to the deficit by repealing, you voted for it, health care.
Gentleman's time has
10
expired.
seconds, 20 seconds.
I yield the gentleman additional 20 seconds.
Gentleman is recognized for 20 seconds.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And before us is yet another piece of legislation being used as a political gimmick, instead of an honest conversation to seek out compromise, with the purpose aiding the economy. As a new member of the Budget Committee, I am willing and eager to work hard to find comprehensive bipartisan solutions to strengthening our economy. Please let me know when you're ready to sit down and talk and work.
Gentleman's time has expired. The gentleman from California.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. May I inquire of my friend how many speakers he has remaining?
Mr. Hoyer and then myself at this moment.
Wonderful. Well,
do you have other speakers?
I'm going to sit on the edge of my seat in anticipation of Mr. Hoyer's very thoughtful remarks, and I look forward to, Mr. Speaker.
Gentleman reserves. The gentleman from Massachusetts.
Mr. Speaker, I am very proud to yield 3 minutes to the gentleman from Maryland, the Minority Whip, Mr. Hoyer.
The gentleman is recognized for 3 minutes.
thank the gentleman for yielding, and Mr. Dreyer has put additional pressure on me with his thoughtful remarks. Let me say that there's nobody on this floor who doesn't believe that the deficit is a very, very substantial problem that confronts us. And I would hope that there's nobody on the floor who believes it's going to be accomplished in a simple fashion to bring this deficit under control. But I fear that there is too much simplistic, not simple, simplistic rhetoric with reference to this deficit. After borrowing trillions of dollars to finance tax cuts, a new entitlement, and 2 wars, our friends on the Republican side tell us they are now taking the deficit seriously. All of you have heard my comments about how under the Clinton administration the budget was balanced and how under the Reagan and Bush I and Bush II administrations it was not. If our Republican friends mean it, if they were interested in the deficit as anything other than a political issue, if they actually use their House majority to back up their words with action, then no one, in my opinion, would be happier than me and our party, the Democratic Party. Our deficit, I think all of us should agree, is too big for partisan politics. It cripples our children's opportunities. It makes it harder for them to pay for college education, buy a home, start a business, or plan a future. I want my Republican friends to take the deficit seriously. I want my Democratic friends to take the budget deficit seriously, to join President Obama in making the hard choices it will take to get out of debt. But frankly, so far, the opportunity to finally back up the words of fiscal discipline have been a record of disappointment. A rules package, and I tell my friend, the chairman of the Rules Committee, the rules package provides for $5 trillion in additional deficit spending over the next 10 years. $5 trillion. A vote to repeal health care reform is another $230 billion of deficit. Pledge to cut spending by $100 billion, which it has taken them less than a month to break. And today, a one-page resolution with no numbers and no specifics. I think this resolution is unprecedented, certainly in the 30 years that I've been here, which gives to one person out of the 435 the opportunity and the authority to set a number that we will consider in this House. I don't think that's precedented. I don't think it's democratic. It's not transparent, and it's not an open process. Colin Powell has already been quoted, but we're still waiting for the answer of what is going to be cut. At a time when getting out of debt, growing the economy, and creating jobs are our country's defining bipartisan challenges. We need hard choices, not more political theater. Now, we passed a budget enforcement resolution which was criticized by the other side because we didn't pass a full budget. I think that's perhaps correct.
Gentleman's time. Additional 1 minute.
I thank the gentleman for yielding the additional 1 minute. Criticized. But in that budget enforcement resolution, we had a number. And when you voted on the rule, you knew the number you were voting on as a House of Representatives. Here, you have no idea what you're voting on. You could be voting for 2008 numbers or anything less than that under this resolution.
The gentleman yield, and I'll yield my friend additional time.
Okay, fine.
I thank my friend for yielding. Let me just say to my friend, Mr. Speaker, that this is the beginning of a process. This is a one-sentence resolution that will allow this House to go on record making a strong commitment to reducing the level of spending. And my friend was absolutely right in his opening remarks when he said that everyone wants us to reduce the deficit, and he's right. This may be unprecedented, but we're in unprecedented times. And I'd yield my friend an additional 15 seconds. I'll yield him 30 seconds, Mr. Speaker.
I thank the gentleman for his generosity. But let me say to the gentleman, it may be unprecedented times, but does not warrant this unprecedented abdication of democracy in this House in setting what is probably the most critical question confronts government: how much are you going to pay for it? I think we all agree on that. That's what is at issue here, and this resolution does not allow members of Congress to engage on that. It simply gives to one person the ability to set that number. It's not only unprecedented, it, in my opinion, is undemocratic with a small d. It does not provide the transparency and the openness of which the gentleman has correctly spoken, and I hope we pursue. And I hope that we oppose this resolution, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman's time has expired. The gentleman from California.
A couple more speakers. They just
Gentleman
came.
from Massachusetts recognized.
Would you?
Would the gentleman yield?
Yes,
The gentleman said that Mr. Hoyer was going to speak and then he was going to close. Have things changed?
Yeah, things have changed. More people
okay,
have come down to the floor.
Oh, okay. I just wanted to
There's
get it
great
clear.
interest
Okay,
in this.
Okay, thank you.
I'd like to yield 1.5 minutes to the gentlewoman from Texas, Ms. Jackson Lee.
Gentlewoman is recognized for 1.5 minutes.
I thank the Speaker very much. I thank the gentleman from Massachusetts, and I consider the gentleman from California a colleague that I've known for a good while, and I know that there are certainly good intentions, but I always believe that when you're elected to this powerful body that represents over 300 million Americans, as the census has given us new numbers of how many Americans we have the privilege of representing, you do have to speak about the future. When you begin to talk about generic numbers going back to 2008 levels, you are speaking generally without substance, because it is our commitment to be able to move America forward. And I hope the President will stay in the blue column, because you can see the red column. In the past administration, there were no job creation. And so when you talk about reducing the deficit, it must be with a plan. It must be with substance, because you can repeal with no substance. And I would just raise the question, do we want a nation that does not invest in education? Do we want a nation that does not help our businesses invest to create jobs? And do we want a nation that says that security, the FBI, the DEA, someone called in today and talked about how important it was to ensure that we had the right kind of law enforcement? Or do we want to tell those who are on Social Security, who have worked, literally worked, or are disabled, that there are no more dollars for them because we have just, without any guidance, gone back to 2008 levels? I would just ask that we move this country forward, Mr. President, and I ask that we invest in America. I yield back.
Gentleman from California.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to reserve the balance of our time.
Gentleman reserves the balance of his time. Gentleman from Massachusetts.
Mr. Speaker, we have an additional speaker on the way, but it looks like you may have additional speakers. I would...
Gentleman, would the gentleman yield?
Yes.
I thank my friend for yielding, and I would say that in our capacity, as the gentleman knows, as the majority, I'm simply going to yield to my friend from Grandfather Community, North Carolina, so that she can file the rule. And
why don't you do that?
What we're doing. The gentleman like me to do that? Well,
yeah.
Okay, I guess we're not doing that right now, so I'll reserve the balance of my time then. Why are we not doing that?
Reserves. And the gentleman from Massachusetts.
Mr. Speaker, I yield myself 1 3/4 minutes.
The gentleman's recognized for 1 3/4 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, the problem with this resolution, as has been stated over and over and over again, is that it is a press release. It contains no number. People on the other side talk about tough choices. It doesn't talk about any of the tough choices. It exempts defense spending from any cuts. So fraudulent defense contracts are somehow okay, whereas if we, they're somehow better than waste and abuse in domestic spending programs. Everything should be on the table when we're talking about getting this budget deficit under control. And the reason why the number is so important is because that number determines how much we're going to allocate to the various appropriations committees. And that, in turn, determines really the severity of a lot of the cuts that are going to have to be made. Cuts in medical research, research to try to find a cure to cancer, cuts in programs to help feed hungry children, cuts in programs to provide emergency fuel assistance to low-income people during the winter months, cuts in small business loans that can help small businesses get the capital they need to grow and create jobs. We should be talking about jobs in the opening of the session. Instead, what we have talked about are the old ideological battles of the past. Last week we repealed the entire health care bill. This week we're passing a budget resolution that has no number in it. I mean, this is a first. This is unprecedented. And I think the American people who are watching are wondering, why in the world can't you tell us what the number is? Why in the world can't you give us a sense for where you're going to cut? Why in the world can't you even vote on it? There are 435 members of this House. Only one member is going to be able to determine what that budget number is. Mr. Speaker, how much time do I have?
Gentleman's time has expired.
How much time do I have left, Mr.
The gentleman has 1 minute remaining.
I'll give myself the remaining 1 minute.
The gentleman's recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, we're engaged in political theater today. We know the CBO will come up with numbers tomorrow, but the Republicans feel it's important to do this today because somehow they think, you know, the press will pay attention to this and they'll be able to have a counter message to the President's State of the Union address. They are blowing a major opportunity. There is bipartisan concern about the budget. There is a bipartisan consensus that we need to find cuts. And rather than working in a bipartisan way, we have a bill that comes to the floor under a closed rule. We are told that the chairman of the Budget Committee can unilaterally come up with a number. The rest of us are irrelevant to this process. That's not the way it's supposed to be. And I think that the Republican majority owes it, not only to the members of this Congress, but they owe it to the American people to tell us what the number is and where they're going to cut, how deeply they're going to cut, who's going to be impacted. Because I'll tell you this, who's going to be impacted are real people, and they're going to feel the real pain of some of these cuts. So with that, Mr. Speaker, I urge my colleagues to vote against this misguided resolution, this press release, and yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman's time has expired. The gentleman from California. The gentleman's recognized for the balance of time.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. We have bipartisan consensus around here. We need to get our economy back on track, and we need to do everything that we can to cut federal spending. The distinguished Minority Whip just said as much, and so there is a consensus, and I think that's wonderful. In a few hours, 9 o'clock this evening, Democrats are going to be sitting with Republicans. Republicans are going to be sitting with Democrats. It's going to be unprecedented. And I will say that Mr. Hoyer referred to this simple one-sentence resolution as unprecedented. And I believe that it probably is unprecedented. What it says, I mean, I've almost memorized the one sentence, Mr. Speaker. It says that we need to make sure that the Budget Committee and the Appropriations Committee work to get us to 2008 spending levels or less. I personally believe that we should be substantially below 2008 levels. I believe that we need to take that kind of action, and it's true. We want this institution to have an opportunity before the President stands right over my shoulder at 9 o'clock this evening and delivers his State of the Union message. We want this institution to have a chance to go on record saying that we are committed to doing everything that we can to get the spending levels to 2008 or less. Now, Mr. Speaker, we're in the position we are, and that itself is unprecedented. And that's why unprecedented action is necessary. Now, I began my remarks by talking about the fact that probably one of the most enduring and powerful memories of 2010 was what took place in Athens, Greece. We saw the riots take place in the streets from public service employees in the wake of the government facing the responsibility of imposing austerity standards on the people of Greece. And what happened? We saw this huge outcry come because they were arguing that they couldn't, in fact, bring about cuts in spending. And I juxtapose that to what we saw in the last year here. We saw tens of thousands of Americans taking to the streets, carrying this message, taxed enough already. They came together to petition their government to bring about spending reductions, not complaining that the government was making cuts, complaining that the government wasn't making enough cuts. And that's exactly what we're doing. In fact, Mr. Speaker, I believe that this may be the first time in human history that we have witnessed what it was that we saw take place last year and led to the outcome in the November 2nd election. We know that the greatest change in three-quarters of a century took place in this institution. 63 members of the Democratic Party were defeated. We now have 87 new Republicans and 9 new Democrats who've joined with us. And they have carried this message to us that we need to rein in spending. Now, Mr. Speaker, I think it's important to note that our real goal is above that. It is job creation and economic growth, getting our economy back on track so that people out there who are trying to get onto the first rung of the economic ladder are able to do just that. We have a painfully high unemployment rate, and people across this country are hurting. Now, Mr. Speaker, what steps can we take to create jobs? I personally believe that we need to, and I look forward to having the President talk about this tonight, open up new markets around the world so that union and non-union workers in the United States of America can have the opportunity to sell goods and provide services into countries like Colombia and Panama and South Korea, where these pending agreements exist. I believe that since Japan has brought about a reduction in its top corporate rate, the rate of those job creators, we can reduce the top corporate rates, the highest rate of any country in the world now, from 35 to 25%. I understand the President may be proposing that this evening. That will go a long way towards creating jobs. But, Mr. Speaker, what we're doing with House Res 38 is we are getting ourselves on a path towards fiscal responsibility, and I believe that that is one of the most important things that we can do as we seek this shared goal of job creation and economic growth. So if we can let this institution go on record in support of getting to 2008 levels or less, I'm convinced that that will be a strong step towards our goal, our shared goal of creating jobs and establishing economic growth. This is the beginning of a process, Mr. Speaker, the beginning of a process. Again, a one-sentence resolution that this House will be voting on in just a few minutes. But the process itself is one that is broken. It's broken because for the first time since the '74 Budget Act was put into place, we've not had a budget. We've not had a budget. We're almost 5 months into the new fiscal year, and we are in the process of cleaning up the mess that was handed to us. And so how is it we plan to do it? Well, Speaker Boehner has made it very clear, and that is we need to make sure that we have an open, free-flowing debate as we proceed with the budget, and I'm convinced that our Rules Committee will make alternatives in order when we proceed with the work that the Budget Committee will have done, and I'm convinced that we will get back to the kind of regular order that I think today Democrats and Republicans alike would want to see, and that is a chance for Democrats and Republicans to stand up and offer amendments to the appropriations bills. So, Mr. Speaker, I'll say again that it's a simple one-sentence resolution. Are we going to let this institution get onto a path towards reducing the size, scope, reach, and control of the federal government, or are we not? And so, Mr. Speaker, I'm going to urge my colleagues to vote in favor of this very, very important resolution. With that, out of respect to my friend from Worcester, who's swinging his hands in anticipation of my close, I will yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back the balance of his time. All time for debate has expired. Pursuant to House Resolution 43, the previous question is ordered on the resolution as amended. For what purpose the gentleman from New York rise?
I have a motion to recommit at the desk.
Is the gentleman opposed to the resolution?
Indeed, I am.
The gentleman qualifies. The clerk will report the motion.
Mr. Bishop of New York moves to recommit the resolution, House Resolution 38, to the Committee on Rules with instructions to report the same to the House forthwith with the following amendments. Page 2, line 1, insert 1 after that. Page 2, line 2, insert the following before the period. And 2, no spending for any contract entered into by the United States government with a company that has been determined by the Secretary of Labor to have offshored or outsourced American jobs overseas.
Without objection, the previous question is ordered on the motion to recommit. The question is on the motion to recommit. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. No. In the opinion of the chair, the noes have it.
Mr. Speaker, may I request a recorded vote?
Does the gentleman ask for the ayes and nays?
I ask for the yeas and nays.
The ayes and nays are requested. Those favoring a vote by the ayes and nays will rise. A sufficient number having risen, the ayes and nays are ordered. Members will record their votes by electronic device. Pursuant to Clause 8 of Clause 9 of Rule 20, the 15-minute vote on the motion to recommit will be followed by 5-minute votes on adoption of the resolution if ordered, and the motion to suspend the rules with regard to House Resolution 49. This is a 15-minute vote.
The House has been debating H.Res. 38, which is a resolution that would set federal spending for fiscal year 2011 at 2008 or lower levels. This would be non-defense or non-security spending. This is a procedural vote ahead of that. This should be the last series of votes on the House floor as they will finish up work and prepare for the State of the Union this evening. Paul Krawczak has been covering the budget debate for Congressional Quarterly and joins us on the phone. Tell us what this House resolution today, how would this impact 2011 spending for the rest of the fiscal year?
Well, what this will do, the House is expected to pass this resolution, and it will instruct the House Budget Chairman, Paul Ryan, to provide a budget allocation number for fiscal 2011, the current fiscal year. A budget allocation number that would reduce fiscal 2011 spending to 2008 levels. Specifically, it would reduce non-security discretionary fiscal 2011 spending to 2008 levels. And what I mean by that is non-security spending is defined as discretionary spending except for defense, except for homeland security, and except for military construction and veterans.
Well, there's been a lot of talk in the debate here today on the floor and yesterday evening, Democrats saying there aren't any specific numbers in this resolution. What's the best estimate for how much will be cut from the current levels?
You know, it's still a little uncertain. In their Pledge to America, the House GOP said that they would save $100 billion by scaling back spending to 2008 levels. But that $100 billion was based on looking first at fiscal 2008 non-security spending, which was about $378 billion, and comparing that to House Democrats' plans to spend about $478 billion. So that's where you get the $100 billion difference. However, it's unclear whether Ryan's budget allocation will cut a full $100 billion or whether it would basically just cut spending for the final 7 months of the year, which would be about $55 to $60 billion. So, you know, it could be anywhere between $50 billion and $100 billion that would be cut.
Well, there's lots of news today on the budget, so help sort this out a little bit. We have the House debate, obviously, today on the levels for 2011. The news today that Eric Cantor is going to call for a House vote on a continuing resolution for the remainder of this year. And also late news today that the President may call for an additional freeze in his State of the Union. How do all of these things intersect?
Well, Congress did not pass any of the spending bills for fiscal 2011, the year that we're in, which began October 1st. And so the government is being funded by a continuing resolution which ends March 4. So the first thing to do is come up with another continuing resolution that would fund the government after March 4. And so Ryan later this week will come out with his budget allocations for fiscal 2011, and the House then will build a spending plan, build a continuing resolution to fund the government for the rest of the year. So that's fiscal 2011. And Eric Cantor, the House Majority Leader, said today that the vote on this, the House would consider this new continuing resolution to fund the government for the rest of the year the week of February 14. That's the same week that President Obama is expected to come out with his proposed budget. But his proposed budget will be for the next fiscal year, fiscal 2012. And in terms of the State of the Union tonight, when he talks about a freeze, it's unclear whether it would include fiscal 2011. It may, but certainly he would be looking forward toward fiscal 2012, which begins next October.
Right, and he's sort of raising the ante from fiscal 2012 to and beyond, because last year in the State of the Union, the President called for a 3-year freeze on spending. Paul Krawczak of Congressional Quarterly, thank you for the update. You can read Paul's work at CQ.com. Series of vote on the House floor, a couple of them dealing with HRES 38 on federal spending. We're going to open up our phone lines for your thoughts on federal spending, specifically because you didn't hear a lot about specifics in this debate ahead of this. Where can the government cut spending? Here are the numbers to use. If you're a Democrat, the number is 202-585-3885. For Republicans, that number is 202-585-3886. For independents and others, it's 202-585-3887. Make sure that you mute your television when you call in, and if you have reached C-SPAN in the last 30 days and gotten on the air, give others a chance to call in this afternoon. Here's the scenario. This is the first of 3 votes. This is the vote on the motion to recommit, the last chance to change the bill, and then final passage of that resolution, HRES 38, expected after that, and one more 5-minute vote to follow on a suspension bill debated earlier. And that'll do it legislatively for the U.S. House this afternoon as they prepare for the State of the Union tonight. And that will obviously get underway in the House chamber, and the President's speech at 9. Our coverage starts at 8 o'clock Eastern here on C-SPAN. Let's go to Philadelphia. Ricardo, you're first up. Hi there.
Good afternoon. I've been watching and observing all the goings-on today, as well as previously prior to this. And I just couldn't understand one thing, and perhaps you could help me with that. Has the majority continued to debate and discuss cutting and rollbacks, and why don't they consider rescinding the tax breaks that they gave to the millionaires? That would be a lot of money saved right there.
Ricardo, thanks for your input. Jim is in Cardigan, Ohio, on our Republican line. Go ahead.
Yes, I'm very much in favor of this. It's about time that they did something to stop spending and spending and spending, and it's something they should have did a long time ago.
And where specifically, Jim, do you think the biggest cuts can be made in federal spending?
I think there's a lot of programs that could be looked at one at a time and go through the programs that are, and I heard the other day there was something like 30 programs for senior citizens. I'm a senior citizen. Why do there have to be 30 programs? Why not cut some of them programs and combine them with other programs to do the same job?
Here's Roger in Roger. What town are you calling from? On our independent line. Go ahead. No, that's not Roger. Indianapolis. Leslie, go ahead. Independent.
Yeah, I think they should recommit with instructions, and I think they could cut their spending across the board, probably in a lot of different things, including the defense. We're wasting way too much money there. I also think it was really, really cool that they were asking that companies who have had, would not get contracts from the government if they've outsourced our jobs. I think that would have been really, really good. And I'm also really disappointed that the House is not in the House. I'm looking at this, and there's what, maybe 5% of the people that should be there.
You mean you're looking at the screen right now?
Yeah, there's nobody there.
Well,
Where is everybody?
This is one of the reasons it's a 15-minute vote is to bring members to the floor. You'll see them there shortly, and you will probably see all of the members as the State of the Union is tonight. But they'll be showing up soon enough. Okay?
Yeah, but they're supposed to be voting on a recommit with instructions, and there's nobody there voting.
You will see them come to the floor and vote. That it does take a while sometime on that first vote. You were right. But thanks for the call. Let's hear from Roger. Now I'm going to on our Democrats line. Where are you calling from?
Reedsburg, Wisconsin.
Okay, great.
My suggestion on this federal government cut spending proposals that they're trying to do is I'm on fixed income. I'm on Medicare and Social Security. And I believe that they need to cut everywhere else except that. I mean, we don't need to put the country's problems on the backs of the retired people in this country. And so any proposal to even get near Social Security and Medicare, I think, would be a very, very dangerous situation for this country.
As we heard in our conversation with Paul Krosak of CQ, a couple of notes on the discretionary spending freeze. Also that the continuing resolution, the CR that will fund the government through the rest of the fiscal year 2011 through the end of September this year, that will come up for a vote the week of the 14th, and that's the same week that President Obama will release his 2012 budget. The Hill writes about that vote that's now scheduled, according to Eric Cantor, the week of the 14th. They write that on a more practical level, the early vote will provide more time for what is expected to be a contentious battle with the Senate, where Democratic leaders are sure to resist the level of spending reductions the House GOP will demand. Lawmakers typically wait until the last minute to act on stopgap funding measures. We're taking your calls on the federal budget. This first vote here, a procedural vote, a motion to recommit on HRES 38. That's the resolution that would set fiscal year 2011 spending, the non-defense, non-security spending, at 2008 levels or lower. We're asking you about where the government can cut spending, if they should. And we go next to Jacksonville, Florida. Simon, Independent. Simon, do us a favor there. Mute your television and go ahead with your comments.
Sure. Hold on.
Jacksonville, are you there?
Better?
Yeah, it's better.
Yeah,
go ahead, Simon.
Well, you can cut spending by cutting everybody's pay, and they want to take away our health care. Why don't they give up their own government-regulated health care?
Well, the president has frozen pay for some federal workers, a move that was effected late last year. Birmingham, Alabama, next up. Arnett on our Democrats line.
Good afternoon. How you doing?
Doing fine, thanks.
My suggestion for cuts, because I watched contract hearings yesterday, wartime contract in Afghanistan and Iraq.
Yes.
And when they're building first world schools there next to mud hut schools that are costing billions of dollars, why don't we build the schools that the people in Afghanistan need instead of schools that would fit in the United States where they could be taken care of? I mean, one school they showed had a glass atrium 3 stories high.
A school in Afghanistan?
Yes, school in Afghanistan. Looks better than any of the schools I've seen in my area. Why can't we cut that spending? Why is all of our money being spent? I mean, we spend $1 billion a week.
Arnett, thank you for that call. Mayfield, Kentucky, Rocky, Independent line.
Yes, sir. How are you today?
Just fine.
Spending should be cut everywhere. I don't understand why all Americans, whether you're a Democrat, Republican, Independent, don't understand that the government should just cut everywhere, every program that's out there. And I'll give you an example. I spent 30 years in the service, and we always had a budget, and you were required to spend only the money that you had in your budget. You couldn't go a dollar over that budget at the unit that you were serving at. People at home, if you take home $30,000 a year, you can't spend $31,000 because there's $1,000 you don't have. I just don't understand why all Americans, I don't care what party they are, have to come to the responsibility that we need to stop spending. A friend of mine told me that we both collect pensions from the military.
Yeah.
And he said, what if they shut down the government? That means we won't get our military pensions. Well, that's right, we won't. Now, eventually we will. Once they get everything back in order, of course we'll get our pensions back. But that's why you're supposed to, people tell you all the time, you should always have a little money in reserve. So it doesn't make any difference if you make $1 million or a year or $2,000 a year. People have to be responsible, and our Congress should be. And it's pretty tough when you look at the political spectrum. Everybody wants to gain an advantage here and there. It's very simple. Just get out there, stop spending, get our ducks in a row, and then eventually we can pick up the pieces and we can move on.
Let's go to Texas, Elgin, Texas, and Marcia is on our Democrats line. Your thoughts on the federal budget?
Well, we could stop giving money to religious organizations through the Office of Faith-Based and Community Initiatives, and they could close that office, and we could save money on all those salaries. And another thing, if you want to save Social Security, then raise that cap from $106,800 all the way up to $250,000. In fact, raise it above $250,000. Make everybody pay Social Security on 100% of their income, just like the poor people do, just like I did all the way through my career.
Ernestine is next in Melbourne, Florida, Republican line.
Yes.
You're on the air, Ernestine. Go ahead.
Yes, I think you should cut all these programs like Acorn and the churches and everything. They give a lot to these different countries. I think we should cut back on the money we give to them.
The House is in the first of a series of 3 votes. That middle vote will be the final passage vote on HRES 38, which is the resolution setting all non-defense, all non-security spending for the rest of 2011 back to 2008 or lower levels. We continue taking your calls, and a reminder that this will be the last series, the only series of votes in the House this afternoon. They will wrap up work this afternoon, then prepare for the State of the Union tonight. Our coverage on C-SPAN starts at 8 o'clock, the President's speech at 9 o'clock. Next up in Washington, D.C. is, Anchorage, Alaska. And go ahead with your call. Hey there.
Hi, I had a couple of points. If we would stop importing things, that would help our deficit. And China has free nation status. Why aren't they in Afghanistan with us, backing us up, since they're influencing our economy so much? Those are 2 points. And as minimum wage is an acceptable living, you work for us. Why aren't you making minimum wage when everything is paid for you?
Now to Angela in Washington, D.C., Independent line. Hi there.
Hi, how are you?
Fine, thanks.
Well, 2 things. As I was waiting to talk to you, I just got an invitation from Frank Luntz to participate in the online real-time response to the President's State of the Union address tonight. So
how does that work? How did you get that, and how does that work?
Okay, well, a couple of months ago, Frank Luntz is the I forget what you call him, but
he's a Republican pollster.
Oh, right, he's a pollster, and there was going to be a focus group. I can't remember now but it was like during the debate, and I signed up, but they didn't pick me for whatever reason. So I guess they sort of keep your name in a database. So just a few minutes ago, literally, I was scanning my emails, and it was an invitation. And so what you have to do is an hour before the speech starts, you have to go online. They give you the link. You click the link. Then they gave me a password to use. You put your password in, and then they will give you instructions. So I'm kind of excited because, whenever they always say people are polled, I always wonder, well, who are they talking to? Because, I've never met anybody who ever got polled.
And this is your first time too, Angela?
Yes.
Oh, cool. Okay.
And so that's
well, very good.
Exciting to me. But anyways, for what I wanted to say, as the topic that you're talking about now, I actually even called Eric Cantor's office and gave the suggestion about a month ago, and whether they listened or not, I don't know. But in Social Security, when you say that, people forget that there are all different kinds of Social Security. One of them is disability insurance. So when you, I noticed because I had to do this, when you sign up for Social Security, you are never approved right away. Some people wait 2 or 3 years to get approved, and when you finally do get approved, you get a lump sum settlement, which can be like upwards, like $1,000 or so. I mean, like actually more than that. But anyway, then once you're approved, you not only get the lump sum, then they start paying you a monthly allotment, and depending on, what your salary was, I guess that's kind of how they base it on. But also what happens is once you are able to go back to work, if you're able to go back, you not only collect your salary, but they continue to pay you for a year.
Angela, thanks for sharing that idea with us. We do want to get a call or two more as this vote winds down. Winston-Salem, North Carolina. And Tom, go ahead, Democratic caller.
Yes, I'd like to just see them cut foreign spending. That is killing us. Take care of our own, then worry about the rest of the world.
Fort Myers, Florida, and Bart, a Republican caller.
Yes, I'm a first-time caller, and
Welcome.
I think one way they could start by reducing the deficit is by eliminating the Department of Education in Washington, D.C. that was created in 1979, and we waste $100 billion a year to that outfit up there, and I haven't really seen any improvement in education since 1979. And I am all for teachers and them getting good pay and all, but it's a state's deal, and I don't know why we're sending all this money for a big bureaucracy up there in Washington, D.C.
On our independent line is Ralph in Wind Gap, Pennsylvania.
Yes. I was just saying I think it's great that they're finally doing something. I just hope it ain't too late. And it's just like everything else, so like the health care bill. There's not 2,980 pages. They're bickering about 3 or 4 things. What's in the other pages? You know, they just think the people are so dumb.
To Ralph and all our callers, thanks for that. The House is wrapping up this motion to recommit vote. Final passage vote is next. One more 5-minute vote after that. Of course, the State of the Union later tonight. It's at 9 o'clock, and our coverage here on C-SPAN starts at 8 p.m. Eastern.
yeas are 184, the nays are 242, with 1 answering present. The motion is not adopted. The question is on the adoption of the resolution. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. Opinion of the chair? The ayes have it.
Madam Speaker.
The yeas and nays have been requested. Those favoring a vote by the yeas and nays will rise. A sufficient number having risen, the yeas and nays are ordered. Members will record their votes by electronic device. This is a 5-minute vote.
And this is the resolution that would call for cuts in non-security, non-defense spending for fiscal year 2011 back to 2008 levels or lower. 5-minute vote on the House floor. The House today will gavel out, go into recess, and come back in a joint session with the U.S. Senate to hear from President Obama the State of the Union tonight at 9 o'clock. Our coverage here on C-SPAN beginning at 8 o'clock Eastern.
Yeas are 256 and the nays are 165. The resolution is adopted. Without objection, a motion to reconsider is laid on the table. Without objection, the title is amended. The unfinished business is the vote on the motion of the gentleman from Iowa, Mr. Latham, to suspend the rules and agree to House Resolution 49, on which the yeas and nays were ordered. The clerk will report the title of the resolution.
House Resolution 49, resolution providing capital flown flags for recipients of the Medal of Honor.
The question is, will the House suspend the rules and agree to the resolution? Members will record their votes by electronic device. This is a 5-minute vote.
The House passes HRES 38, 256 to 165, the resolution that would set spending for the rest of fiscal year 2011, non-discretionary, I should say non-security, non-defense spending, back to 2008 levels or lower. This is the last recorded vote of the day. This on a suspension bill debated earlier, which would provide capital flown flags for recipients of the Congressional Medal of Honor. 5-minute vote on the House floor. The House will wrap up its work before 5 o'clock Eastern today in order that the House chamber can be made ready for tonight's joint session and the President's State of the Union address. The State of the Union address itself is at 9 o'clock Eastern. Our coverage here on C-SPAN gets underway at 8 o'clock with our preview program. President's speech at 9. That'll be followed by the Republican response from House Budget Committee Chairman Paul Ryan, and we understand he'll be giving that from the Budget Committee hearing room. News reports indicate this afternoon that during his State of the Union this evening, the President will propose a 5-year freeze of non-security discretionary spending as a way to reduce the federal government budget deficit. Also today, the Associated Press reports that among those attending, Chief Justice John Roberts will lead a contingent of 6 Supreme Court justices to tonight's address. Again, that's at 9, and our coverage getting underway here at 8 p.m.
On this vote, the yeas are 424, the nays are 0. Two-thirds being in the affirmative, the rules are suspended, the resolution is agreed to, and without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table. For what purpose does the gentlewoman from North Carolina rise? The House will come to order. House will be in order. What purpose does the gentlewoman from North Carolina rise?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I send to the desk a privilege report from the Committee on Rules for filing under the rule.
The clerk will report the title.